Hola Hola Familia, Nessa Snow here, and welcome back to my channel. So as you can see, we are in a different place again. I wanted to cook. As you can probably tell, I'm a little made up, but dressed down, and that's because I haven't quite been feeling myself today. I just kind of feel bleh, and I think anyone out there knows what that feels like, and you always have that thing that makes you feel better, or at least makes you feel more like yourself. And there are a couple things that I do to put myself in either a better mood or to make myself feel like myself, and I've done one of those things so far, and so we're gonna go ahead and cook. And I feel maybe one of the reasons why cooking makes me feel more like myself or makes me feel better is because it also kind of brings me home. In my family, cooking is a big deal, and I don't know if that's just my family or if it's culture, but food is family, and food always brings us together. My grandma, like, you go to her house and she, even if it's just for you, she'll cook you a feast, and it always reminds you about how much she loves you and cares for you. She always told me that to tell someone you love them all the time does not truly mean you love them, but to show someone you love them is true love, and she does that with her food. And I feel that as I've grown up and I've seen her do this, it also puts that sense of love and family when it comes down to cooking. So even though I don't have anyone to cook for today, it's still maybe lessens that homesick feeling, the loneliness, and just, it also, I'm not wallowing in self-pity, just laying down and sleeping or taking a nap. Instead, I'm making myself get up and do something, and cooking takes a while. So it takes your mind off of things. I usually play music while I'm cooking, I do everything with music, if y'all haven't noticed. So I don't really have a name for what I'm about to cook, other than calling it just a stir fry of sorts. I have various things that I, like my grandma, I just look into the fridge and I can almost like her just be like, oh, I have 2 ingredients and I have to make something from it, and I can make a feast out of 2 ingredients. I'm not as good as my grandma, but I'm getting there. And so one day, pretty much low on cash, and low on stuff in the fridge, I put a couple of these things together, ended up tasting good, and I've made it ever since. So one of the main things that you're going to need is cabbage. I got 2 colors here just because one of the things that I have learned watching my mom diet or watch diet shows is that the more colorful the food, the better it is. So honestly, I'm just doing it to be pretty. And then carrots, zucchini, onion, bell pepper, which I'm obviously running out. You can have whiskey on hand or a wine, and then ground beef. So let's get to it. I'm gonna use a pretty hefty knife. I think that one's good. You always want to make sure that your instruments are sharp. Just because they say the danger is in the sharp objects, but honestly, it's pretty dangerous to have dull objects as well, because then you can't cut things and you're trying to put more effort into it and you might have your hand in the way, and so actually having a dull knife could probably be just as dangerous as having a working knife, a nice sharp one. And so as you cook this, it does shrink a little bit. So I cut quite a bit of cabbage, even if it's just for myself, which granted I also love to eat and I eat a lot. So it's just up to you and how much you eat usually. If you eat more like a rabbit, then I would cut maybe a little bit less than what I'm cutting. But just keep in mind that it will shrink. And if you cut some of your cabbage too big, just go back over it and cut it a little bit smaller. You want it pretty thin, unless you really like cabbage. Then maybe you can leave it thick, but it doesn't have to be aesthetically pleasing as far as the size, because it all kind of looks the same once you have it all stirred together. The cabbage does take quite a while to cook, so we're gonna come over to our stove. You're gonna have a pretty, I for the longest time didn't have any kitchen supplies, but a smaller saucepan is fine, a bigger one. I am going to turn my oven up to between the high and the medium. I apologize for my look today and for the dirtiness of my kitchen. Then you can come over here with your butter. One of these, call it anything else, that's what I call them. And you're gonna get yourself a hefty amount. I don't really measure anything, but I would say that's about 2 tablespoons if you want to be picky about measurements. And I'm just gonna let that melt a little bit. Move it around. The butter does not have to be fully melted. I do just make sure that the pan is well coated and that it is kind of melting. And I leave it on the stove like so. I go get my cabbage and I throw that in there. You're gonna make sure that you stir your cabbage up pretty well with your butter, making sure that the butter covers the cabbage nicely. I stir it for about 2 minutes and you'll start to hear it sizzle. So about 2 to 3 minutes in, you'll start to feel the difference in how soft it is. I don't know if you can really tell the difference on the camera, but it's definitely softer. It almost has a lighter color to it, or at least the green ones are more like see-through-y looking. But they're soft now, and that takes about 2 to maybe 4 minutes at most, 5 minutes at most, to get that soft. And then once it's that soft, I turn my stove. Sometimes I turn it off. Most of the times I just turn it as low as I can. So that is almost ready. So now we're gonna come back over here. We're trying a different angle. I'm having issues with lighting and camera stands. So we've done this. Now we're gonna open up our carrots. These provide a little bit of a crunch to your food. We're gonna drop those in there. If you do not want your food to be crunchy, soak your carrots for about 5 minutes on high heat and make sure they're this thin. If you're cutting them or you purchase them like that, and if you soak them in boiling water for about 5 minutes, they will get softer, and then when you continue to have them on heat with the rest of the food, they will continue to soften. I've done it both ways and I like it. And as well as providing the crunch or flavor, it also is aesthetically pleasing because it's another color added to your food. And so now you have a beautiful green, white, purple, and orange. We're gonna add another, did I say teaspoon earlier? I meant tablespoon. Another 2 tablespoons or 1.5 tablespoons of butter, and just mix that in there really well. This is just to keep it from sticking to the bottom, to give it flavor and salt, and also just to help everything just meld together. Again, coming over to our cutting board, we are gonna cut up some onion. I do mine in rings like that. It's about that thick, and I cut them long ways. Now, these are for the people like me that absolutely love onions. If you don't like onions, as far as like crunching into it, but you still like the hint of onion, you can either add onion powder or dice your onions real thin and throw them in there. I love onions, so I won't be dicing them up very small, and I'll be using quite a bit of them. All right, I'm gonna put this in my pan. And bell pepper. I usually will use about half a bell pepper, but as you can see, I don't have much. So I'm gonna be cutting it pretty thin so it makes it into at least most of the bites that I take in my food. Luckily, I still have the butt, so, and the tips. So I do have quite more than it looked like in the beginning. I definitely try not to get too many seeds because I don't like them. All right, put this in my pot and pan, and usually there are way more than that. I usually like the consistency of onions to bell pepper to either be the same or actually more bell pepper than onion, to give you an idea of how much I'm using of the two. Just mix those in like so. So at this point, I will turn up the heat because I have added my onions and bell peppers and they need to cook. I don't mind raw onions or raw bell pepper, but I do, for this particular dish, want more of a cooked onion and bell pepper. So I'm gonna turn it to the medium, and we do have enough butter to keep this going. And now that everything is together and cooking, we're gonna start adding our spices. I am a big user of chili powder, garlic powder, and some black pepper from Lawry's. It's a seasoned salt. It has black pepper with it. And so these are the three I'll usually put in there. I knew I had onion pepper in there, powder somewhere. So these will just put them in there as you go. This is the first one. I'd say I put about maybe a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons of this because first of all, it's salt and you've already been using butter, so you don't want it too salty. And then it has pepper in it. So if you're not a big pepper user, you want to use maybe a teaspoon of this. But it tastes really, really good. Then we're going to do our garlic powder and our onion powder. Even though we have onions in there, I love onions. And then garlic powder to your liking. I don't know, I think I use like about a tablespoon of it, maybe a little bit, 3 teaspoons maybe, I'm not sure. And then the chili powder, again, to your liking. If you are a big lover of pepper, you can definitely add some. That's white pepper, it's spicier. And just make sure that you mix the powders in well. Now so far, if you're counting your calories, the biggest calorie here is gonna be your butter, but I use, it's not the best on the market, but I use Country Crock County Fresh Taste with the calcium to add extra vitamin D. And this one is only 45 calories per tablespoon, but it's up to you. If you're wanting a richer taste, then you're gonna want richer, better butter, but with richer butter comes higher calories. So that's definitely up to you. And you can definitely see the steam coming up on this. We still have it on medium heat. Want to move it around, make sure it's cooking well. Now the next thing is going to be our soy sauce. Again, this also has salt, which is why I'm not physically putting a handful of salt in here, because everything I use has salt in it. And that's why I'm very, very careful with that Lawry's pepper, seasoned salt, because with butter and soy sauce, that's enough salt. Now, if you suffer from high blood pressure and high cholesterol, please do not add soy sauce to this or anything with high sodium. Just don't. It's not good for your health, and this is going to be a lot worse for you than it would have been if you didn't add these things. The soy sauce is for flavor and also to help the cooking along. It makes, it steam more. And sometimes I'll even add a little bit of water just because I want that steam going. So I put about a tablespoon of water, not a lot, just a little bit to get the steam going, because the steam is what's going to cook your food. So we are going to leave that there cooking and steaming. We're gonna come back over here and we're gonna get our zucchini. And we're gonna make very skinny pieces of zucchini. Not too skinny, just skinny enough to cook. Oops. I used about half of my large zucchini. And I'm also now going to cut these in halves and then in fourths. You can definitely keep it at halves if you would like. I just feel they're easier to cook the smaller they are. And then you're going to pour your zucchini in there. And mix that up. And since zucchini is such a water-based vegetable, it doesn't take very long to cook them. Now, as you can see, the color is going away. So if you're not big on spices and more of a plain flavor, then don't add the spices, and make sure that you put all your vegetables together a lot quicker so they're cooking more at the same time, and that helps them keep their color as being cooked at the same time so they're not on here too long. So about this time is when I'm going to add my whiskey. You can use any brand or you can use white wine, and be gracious. If you're cooking this for the kids, don't worry about the alcohol level in the food. When you cook alcohol, the alcohol percentage goes down, if not totally goes away. I know if you bake with it, it completely goes away. As far as cooking with it, I mean, it's not going to be the same. Your kids aren't going to get drunk is what I'm saying. So this is just for flavoring and to cook the food, not to get you drunk. Alright, and so I'm going to move this over, bring in my skillet. I'm still going to leave this on low as the squash cooks. You want to kind of leave that cooking, and if you have a lid, put a lid on it. Into your skillet, you're going to put, I believe it's a pound of ground beef. You're going to turn your heat up to medium. Again, if you have high blood pressure or high cholesterol, try ground turkey. It tastes the same. It's delicious. This is what I happen to have on hand, so I'm using this today. Now before it cooks, we're gonna go ahead and season it. We're gonna go in with, again, our Lowry's black pepper seasoned salt. Don't use this if you have a medical condition that you should not be using salt. And with onion pepper powder, garlic, and just a little bit of paprika. We're going to go in with about a half a cup of water. Just kind of drop it in the side there. But you do want the bottom of your skillet to have water in it, or your meat will burn and the seasoning will not mix properly. So as I wait for the water to evaporate, I am gonna add a little bit of chipotle chili pepper in here, just because I don't want to use more paprika, which, I mean, they're both pretty spicy, but the chipotle smells so good and gives it a little bit more color. And we're just waiting for that water to evaporate. So at this point, if you check on your little stir fry you made, you'll see that your zucchini is nice and soft looking. You can check it, make sure, and if it isn't as soft as you want it to be, turn up the heat and mix it around until you get your desired tenderness. You okay, baby? I obviously don't have a lid for this one, so I'm just using another pan. Be careful with anything that you do in the kitchen. I'm just having to make do, but I am paying attention and making sure that I don't burn this place down. So as you can probably tell, the water is evaporating. So at this point, I add my organic baby spinach. And I do about a handful because these also shrink. So you want to get, and with meat, when I'm cooking with a cast iron skillet, I leave the spinach whole, the whole leaf. But if I was not using a cast iron skillet, I would just split it with my hands in little tiny pieces, kind of just rip them up into there. But cast iron skillets are produce a lot of heat, and heat causes the spinach to wilt and shrink. So I'm gonna put a little bit more, another handful, throw it in like so, and turn my heat off. I'm going to take my skillet off the heat because I don't want it to burn. If you're using a cast iron skillet, make sure that you're using protection on your hands. You don't want to burn yourself in the kitchen. All right. And now for the finished product. I start with the little stir fry that I made. I get my ground beef or ground turkey, depending on what I'm using that day. And I put that right on top in the middle. Like that. Of course, make sure that your oven is turned off, or I guess I should say your stove is turned off. And then as your meat is cooking, you do have a moment that you can actually start cleaning up and putting things in the dishwasher. If you're someone like me and you just now living by yourself, it's hard to figure out when you're supposed to clean, and You definitely don't want to be anything like your mom because it's your place. And believe it or not, mom wasn't nagging. Cleaning up after yourself, after you use things, does cut a lot of time. There are times where I will clean after I cook. That's annoying because my food gets cold, and I have cooked, or I have cleaned after I've eaten, and that's just annoying because at that point I'm either watching TV or time has passed and it's already time to go to bed, and the last thing I want to do is clean things up and clean dishes. So other than the 2 skillets that I just used, everything has been cleaned and put away, and all the fruits and vegetables have put away, and this is the finished look. I am super excited to try my finished product. That's good. Very tasty. A little spicy, but perfect. I hope you enjoyed following me on one of my passions, cooking. I'm not the best at it, but I'm getting better and I'm enjoying the learning process. And I think it's a good lesson for everyone to just find things that you're passionate about, or just find things that take space in your day that bring you just a grain of happiness. It doesn't have to be something super exciting or super expensive. This plate cost me less than $20. I'll have leftovers tomorrow, and other than the meat that I used, I still have a lot of the vegetables to use in meals to come. And so it definitely didn't cost me that much, and it's healthier and cheaper than eating out. But just in general, finding something that keeps your mind going, keeps you busy, will keep you out of the mundane, and will keep you out of either depression or anxiety, or just out of the struggles from day to day. And if cooking is not that for you, because a lot of people hate cooking because that's all they do, you know, all the time for their family, and it's not a joy. I'm sure it's not if you either have a picky family or have a bunch of kids. Cooking in the kitchen might not be for you, or it might be. Maybe try sweets, cooking cookies with your kids, or cakes, cheesecake, drawing, coloring, writing, poetry, books, reading, just horseback riding, going to the gym. Find what makes you get out of your bad loops, out of those bad times where all you want to do is lay down and take a nap, and sometimes that's not good or healthy for your body or for your brain. And so find something that can almost revive you out of those loops and those feelings. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with me. And as always, if you would like to follow me and Blue on our 2019 journey, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, all Nessa Snow, or on Snapchat, Nessa Snow XO. Gracias, hasta luego, ciao.